What's up, guys? Welcome to the Athlete Conversation. This is your host, Conrado Duauer. And today we have my very good friend and Division One athlete, Sebas Fabrin.
What's up, my man?
How are you, my brother? Good?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah? Ready to dive into the questions?
For sure. Let's do it.
We had a bit of not a pregame, but on the way here we talked a lot. So I feel like
Got warmed up a little bit.
we got warmed up a little bit, right? So guide me through your process as a soccer player, right? When did you start playing? How did you go from being a little kid loving the sport to coming all the way to the U.S.?
Listen, man. First of all, thank you so much for letting me come and join you in this conversation. I'm super excited.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's funny. I'm born into a tennis family, so
So was I, by the
initially
way. So was I.
you were too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's see.
Yeah, man.
So initially my parents expected me to play tennis. And I clearly remember I was 8 years old. I was watching the Champions League final in I think it was 2008, Manchester United versus Chelsea.
2008, that was a long time
2008,
ago.
yeah. And I see Ronaldo, bam, headed in. And I look at my parents and I'm like, this is the guy. This is the guy. So all my friends was playing soccer at the time and I was playing tennis and I was like, okay, I need to play soccer too. So I started playing soccer, and when it got to the point, there's a point where you
You
gotta
gotta decide.
pick.
You gotta
'Cause
decide whether to go with tennis or soccer.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I went with soccer to my mom's
How
pick.
old were you?
11. Let's say
11?
11.
You're
10,
pretty
10,
young.
11.
You're pretty
Yeah,
young.
yeah, yeah.
I decided when I was about 13.
Actually,
Yeah.
okay, but that's late.
That's a little bit late.
Yeah,
I was a bowler in both though now.
I
Like,
know, I
I
know.
was actually better at tennis than I was at soccer.
Have we ever played?
No. Nah, now I'm retired, dude.
Okay, you gotta play though.
Now I'm
You gotta play
retired.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I continued from there, and bro, I sucked. I was not a good player, man.
Some things
And
never change.
some things never changed. Um, but around 12, 13 years old, I started to develop very quickly. I started going by myself on the field after practice without anyone else knowing.
Mhm.
On New Year's Eve, I was standing by myself shooting three kicks. Um, and I guess we're going to talk about that at some point, but that's what I believe pushed me to the next level. And
Yeah.
suddenly I became the captain of my team when I was 14. I got scouted by the biggest academy in Denmark. I was invited in to play with their team at U15, so when I was 14 years old. Um, and then a couple of other journeys happened throughout my career. I moved to
Mhm.
Stockholm in Sweden with my family.
Okay.
My dad got a job there where I got to experience the living abroad experience. Um, and when I moved back to Copenhagen, was when it gets really serious. It was U19 in Europe,
Okay.
the step before you are taking the jump to the professional life. And at this point, you can feel if you're gonna make it pro or you have to figure out something else.
Did you feel the pressure?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like with the players I play with now, playing the biggest 5 leagues in Europe, and
Wow.
I was a center back, and the guys I was play with would be a Serbian Danish guy who would come straight up to my face and just tell me I'm the worst player he's ever seen, and you would have to deal with that,
Yeah. But
But
I feel like that kind of gave you that
builds
mental,
character, man.
that character that you carry with you
Yeah,
now, right?
exactly. That's why
Yeah.
we can handle what we can handle today.
And you were 19 when you were over there?
Yeah, I started at 17, 18,
Okay.
and then finished around 19.
Were you playing U19 when you were 17?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. That's when you're like, I was 17 when I moved back to Denmark. And then around that age, I started on the U19 team,
Okay.
and then I got moving.
And when did you make that? When was the moment that you chose to actually go to college in the US? What made you pick a college in the US? How did that process go?
You see that? So that was kind of the next step.
Uh-huh.
I'm in Copenhagen. I'm halfway through my contract, like an amateur contract, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, of course. We gotta clarify that
Yeah,
for
we
the
gotta clear
NCAA.
for the
For
record.
the NCAA.
Um, and I get texted by this agent from the US, who has seen me on Copenhagen's website, and he's curious if I want to come to the US. And I'd
Mhm.
been on a trip with my family in like 2014, so I was 14 at the time, and we'd been to LA
Okay.
visiting UCLA's campus. And again, I didn't know what the future was going to bring for me, but I knew when I visited that campus that coming to college in the US was an ambition, was a dream.
Mm.
Um, I didn't know if it was going to happen. I didn't know what my chances are. And when that agent contacted me, I had very low expectations. Because I wasn't, it's a big country. There's what, 200, 250 schools in D1. You don't know them when you're from
Yeah.
Europe. So I knew the biggest ones. I knew UCLA, I knew Harvard, I knew Stanford. Other than that, I was lost.
You were pretty
Yeah.
okay. So you
So
needed someone to kind of guide you in the process,
yeah, yeah,
right? And by the way, to clarify, we play on the same team at Fordham University. We're both Division One athletes, and I have actually been working with an organization for many years now, International Doorway, and we actually specialize on bringing international student athletes and students to the U.S. So this conversation we're having is great.
it's very
So
fitting.
yeah, it's very fitting, especially coming from such a specimen, an animal like
Mhm.
you. They call him the butcher on the field. And I think it's very important because a lot of people who are from outside the United States, they don't really know how confusing and how complex the situation here is in the US, right? For
For
an
sure.
American kid, it's very simple, it's the way they were brought up. But from someone international, it's a very different experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So eventually he chose to come to Fordham University, right? And walk me through the process with your family, right? So how did that conversation go? What did your parents support you? How did that go?
Um, my family is from Denmark, obviously.
Yeah.
And our philosophy is that, we're a small country. We the ability to adapt to the world is interesting and important. And my dad played tennis in the US. My
Mm.
mom studied in France for a couple of years. So they had a package. They had some luggage,
Your
in
dad
their
played
backpack.
he played college in the US playing
He
tennis?
played tennis, but not it was a different system back then.
Mm-hmm.
That was more for the experience. He didn't really get recruited in the same way that we do now. But he just came over, felt the experience, felt how it was to live away from home,
Mm.
built so much personality, so much character. So he was obviously a big part of my decision because I could consult with him. He could tell
Okay.
me, okay, you're gonna go through this, you're gonna go through that, you're gonna meet people in this sense. And that was comforting because, then
Mm-hmm.
at least I had some reference. So they were super supportive of my decision. Of course, I come from, fortunately, a family that's very loving.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was not a big fan, me being away from 3.5, 4 years. But at the end of the day, they were very supportive and excited for me, that I had the opportunity to actually go somewhere and live somewhere else and
Mm-hmm.
and build some personality.
And from what, because I actually had a very similar story. My dad also played baseball
No
in
way.
college in the US a long
Okay.
time ago.
Okay.
So I also was fortunate enough to have him as a guidance as well, and kind of push me to take the leap and
Uh-huh.
come to study in the US. Although my story was a little bit different, I moved to the US when I was around 12, as you know. But what from what your dad told you, right?
Mm.
What became true, what didn't become true, like how was your once you got here, right? What were there things that you saw that you were expecting to see, or was it a completely different experience that you were never expecting, and maybe your dad didn't live through the same thing either?
Um, you know, I came during COVID,
Yeah.
which is the same across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter where you were in the world, COVID was a shit show.
Yeah.
And obviously I came. I had been dreaming about New York for a year. I'd signed the scholarship a year ago before I came. So you can imagine you have this visualization of, oh, New York, the city that never sleeps.
Yeah.
It was asleep when I came. It
Yeah.
was dead, and that hit me hard because I couldn't go back home to my family and get comfort. I had to go back to my dorm with my German roommate, who fortunately was someone I had who we were in the situation together and we helped each other out. But it was tough.
Yeah, it was, I
Um,
remember.
but from a bigger picture, my dad gave me this rule which applies for going into a job, moving to another country, starting a new soccer team, which is year one, you are adapting, you are trying to get into it. Year two, you're networking, you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand how it works. And year three is when you make results. And I can tell that's exactly how it is. That's my experience. Year one was rough. It was, trying to understand how it all works.
Yeah.
Year two, I got a little more integrated. I got talking to more people, started to network in New York. And year three, which is what I'm in now, is the first time I'm feeling, okay, I live here. Like
This is your place.
this is my place. I understand how it works.
I think it's very important that you mentioned, because everyone, every single international student athlete or student that moves from and leaves their family behind, that moves from their country and comes to the U.S., they from everyone at different levels, right? But everyone kind of experiences a bit of missing, missing their families,
Yeah.
and you came here without anyone, and then COVID hit. So what would your message be to someone who's just moving into the US, right? And maybe he's going through a difficult time? Because I think my message would be, give it time. The relationships you build, especially being part of a team, are gonna carry you through that, and just be patient. But what would you say?
No, I'm great advice from you. I mean, I agree with that. And because at the end of the day, it's tough to be alone. You need
Yeah.
someone, whoever that's a coach, it's a player, it's teammates. You need someone physically
Mm-hmm.
that you can go to at these times. But other than that, I think it's important to tell that you have to believe in the process. You have to believe that whatever you're experiencing, you can convert into something that's going to make you the person you want to be or
Mm-hmm.
the person you want to become. Um, and again, what's it called? I can confirm that because that's how I'm sitting now. Like you and I, just before we went on here, we talked about how 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we were sitting having a similar deep conversation,
Yeah.
but two different people. And what makes us sit and talk the way we do now is all the things we've been through, all the things we've experienced, all the rough nights, all the rainy Monday nights in your dorm where you only have homework, you don't have anything
Yeah.
else, you have training the next morning. That builds character, and it's super motivating.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I think being part of, and 100% I agree with everything you just said, is I feel like I was part also of your journey.
Mm,
I remember 2 years ago we actually had the conversation about starting a podcast, and
yeah,
here we are,
here we are.
2 years later. But I think being part of an athletic team within the college environment also gives you a very different experience than if you were just a regular student, right?
Yeah,
And this is actually a very massive point. That year during COVID, that was your first year, we ended up winning a championship, right?
for sure.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How was it coming to the US in the first year? Although it was weird, it was hard.
Mm,
We ended up, because we had a conversation, we met up, we had a one-on-one. It was a deep conversation. We talked about how it was difficult for you to be here, and we're just trying to figure it out. And
yeah.
and and the main message was, let's wait, let's be patient, and let's see what happens. And we ended up winning a championship right after. So how was that experience winning here in the US your first year? How does that translate into the years following that
Uh,
that win?
uh, Great question, man. I mean, great question. I think there's this. If you turn to the experts a little bit, if we have to, you and I, 22 years old, we can talk, but we get inspired. And of
Yeah.
course, in that period, I read a lot. I researched a lot. I was trying. I wanted to understand why why was I sad all the time? Why was I frustrated? Why was I feeling lonely?
Hmm.
And one of the advices that was frequently suggested was work on something, like try to achieve something, whether that's going to the gym or achieving a skill or doing well in school. And us progressing the way we did and winning a championship, that gives you that feeling of accomplishment and
Winning.
achievement and winning.
Yeah.
And that's where soccer is a beauty compared to tennis, which you and I could have chosen, because you can win a tennis championship and then only point to yourself and be like, I did that.
Yeah.
Where soccer is, we did that. And that feeling of, brotherhood and companionship that we felt there, that that unifies you, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and in the bus ride home, we really felt like a team.
That was a long bus
There
ride.
was a
Eh?
long
That
bus
was a
ride. There
long
was
bus ride.
Pittsburgh sucked,
Yeah,
but
it did.
that, and it's funny because that moment we came back to New York after winning that championship, that was the turning point for me. That was the turning point in terms of how rough it was, how hard I think everything was. That was when
Mhm.
I started to go the other way. That was when I started to improve,
And seeing
get
the bright
happier,
side.
seeing the bright side.
Yeah. And I think that's also when I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but for me at least, I also started, or the relationship that I built within the team. So I was
Yeah,
only here for a year before he came, right? And then I ended up getting injured. I got my surgeries and went back home, and then
yeah.
I actually came back to New York at the same time you did, right? Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. And I think the relationships we built within the team, within this whole experience of being part of such a massive experience, being part
Uh-huh.
of this team, soccer team, playing for school.
Yeah,
I've developed relationships with my teammates that I don't have with my regular friends, right? We're brothers for life. That's how it
yeah,
feels like. Whenever something's going wrong, or I need someone to back me up, or I need advice, I go to them. So I think that's a very important piece of advice and information that people who are looking to come into the US, they should know. I mean, the relationships you're gonna build with your teammates, are gonna be some that you're gonna carry with you for a very long time, right?
yeah, yeah.
Have you made who's your best friend now? Is it Flo?
I've always avoided that question because
Yeah.
best friend, like, uh
Other than me, obviously. There's a
exactly, like we could pull you out. No, I like to believe that you have a couple. Um
I agree. But again, Flo
and
was your freshman year
Flo
roommate.
Flo Flo and I had a really special relationship because we had similar backgrounds in terms of what we left at home.
Hmm.
Uh, we both left a girlfriend at home in Europe when we moved here, which was, because when you are living in a dorm, I'm sure people who are listening here have at some point, maybe hopefully, because you got to do it, lived very very close to each other in that dorm room.
Yeah. Or they will
You
be if they're looking into the
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah, or there will be for
Hmm.
sure. But one thing you got to understand is you can't really hide. I mean, you can, but
Yeah.
Flo and I saw each other from every side.
Yeah.
I was sitting in my room crying one night. Flo came home with food, caught me.
Hmm.
What am I gonna do? You know,
Yeah.
I have to involve him into what was happening. Um, and you become super close that way, and you would spend so much time with that person. So of course, him and I, we've seen everything. We know a lot of stuff. But I think that goes for the whole team because you're together every day. Like,
In different
imagine
ways, right?
you and I would come into the locker room every morning.
Yeah.
We wake up, we're both feeling tired, we're both feeling exhausted from the week, from the match. We see everything. You can't hide that you're not tired. You can't hide that you're not having a rough day, or you can't
Hmm.
hide that you're having a really good day.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the team so close.
That you
Because
got to get through it together.
yeah,
Yeah, I
there's no
agree.
way around it.
And I think that's one of the blessings that, again, that being part of this team kind of gives you.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about what your experience is with college soccer.
Mm.
So the sport here, how does it differ to Europe? Obviously, they're two very different animals,
Two
and
different
both
animals.
special in their own way, right? So how
Yeah.
would you describe the soccer in the United States?
Um,
Physical,
Physical
if you ask me.
for sure. I
Hmm.
mean, you played in Spain too, so you know. And we gotta take into consideration there are different rules. Look, like the substitution rule.
Yeah,
You and I know we're defenders
yeah,
or defensive players. When you're into the game and you get a new fresh forward, and you
yeah,
haven't been substituted yet, you're like, oh, come
yeah,
on. So it's a fast paced game. You don't have time on the ball, and you gotta adapt to the fact that there are fresh players coming on and off the pitch all the time. But obviously, soccer is still a new sport in the US, which means
hmm,
that what I come from in Europe, in Denmark, soccer's been around for a long time, and the
yeah,
tactics have been around for a long time. FC Copenhagen, the academy I played for, is a really, really acknowledged academy in Denmark, which is very devoted to tactics and very devoted to a philosophy. Like when you get into the academy team, it doesn't matter if you're 15, you're 17, you're 19, or the first team. They all play the same way. You got to
Mm-hmm.
learn that philosophy. And for me, that was possession,
Mm-hmm.
zoning defensively, not man marking, only
Okay.
zoning.
That's a very big change.
Very big change. It was technical ability, but
Over physicality.
over physicality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did fitness for sure, and we did do a lot of running, but not in the same way that you do here. Like it would be more focused on, okay, if we stay as a unit and we move as a unit,
Mm-hmm.
we have to run less. So that was kind of the philosophy there. And my former coach is now a assistant coach in the Premier League in Brentford, which shows the tactical emphasis that there was in this team.
Wow.
Where now, here at in the US, because there are the rules that there are, it's more about how can we press, like how can we move the ball quickly as to the dangerous areas.
Yeah.
So that I had to adapt to that, of course, because it's different.
It's a very big change. I agree.
Yeah.
And I did play a year in Spain after high school, and that experience was completely different. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm a center back, as you know, and my game has always been physical, right? But one thing I noticed in Spain was that the speed of play, don't get me wrong, in college soccer is pretty high.
Yeah.
You don't have time on the ball, like you said, but it's kind of different, right? And Spain is very different to South America. It's very different to other places in Europe, right?
Yeah.
I think in Spain it was more we build out of the back, boom, 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 three touches, everything possession, not as much running. And in the US, there are teams that play like that,
Mm.
and there's other teams depending Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. There are other teams that are more direct. They're
Yeah.
more, it's just a different type of game, right?
Yeah.
Whether for better or worse, it is a very different game, and it's very hard to play as well.
Yeah.
That I feel like there's this misconception in other countries that think that coming to the US and playing soccer here is easy,
For sure.
but that's really not the case.
Not the case.
Not the case at all, right?
I mean, depending on where you look at it,
yeah,
Because, I mean, you could argue that in Spain, where you played, the possession game is at a much higher level.
yeah.
Like and the understanding between the players, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually one thing we haven't addressed, which is one challenge in college soccer, is there's so much in and out in terms of the squad. You don't play with the same guy. Like in academy teams in Europe, you can end up playing with guys for 5 years straight.
Yeah.
Where college soccer, there's constant, like, what is it called? Like, recruiting and graduating. So
It's very tough.
you
It's
get
very
new
tough.
players all the time.
It's very tough.
And you have the season is put up in a way where you have a couple of weeks to get to know each other, and then you have
Yeah.
the first game. So you have to adapt very quickly.
Yeah, that's why I think it's very tough on the coaches, right?
Yeah.
I think we've been pretty lucky at Fordham. We've had our coaches Carlo for 4 years, at least since I've been here. I've had Carlo. He's the one that recruited you.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, Jordan, now Fabio, and I think they do a good job of trying to build that community.
Yeah.
And trying to share the ideal they have in the best way possible for the team, right?
Yeah.
Which we were successful your freshman year and sophomore year. We ended up winning.
Yeah.
But then again, that change from one year to another, you might lose 6 graduate students, and then you come up with a completely different team, right? Which we
sure.
kind of saw this year.
Yeah.
We struggled at the end, and we weren't able to make the playoffs. But I think it's important to note that with the rules, again, the rules changed.
The rules change.
Now we can tie.
Yeah.
Prior to this season, there was goal and goal. So if you
Uh-huh.
tied in regular time in the 90 minutes, you played goal and goal, and whoever scored, it was 2 10-minute halves, right?
Yeah.
Whoever scored won the game. Now they took the rule away, and you see how it affected the whole league, the whole NCAA. I would say
Yeah.
a lot of teams have been tying a lot more.
100%.
But what would you, switching back a little bit? So you from the past, let's say you're talking to your younger self now. right? This is you, Seba, from now talking to your younger self, and you're about to make the decision of coming to the US,
Mm.
right? What would you tell him?
I could tell him a lot of things, man.
Yeah,
I could tell him a lot
it's
of
a tough
things.
question.
Like, are we talking from a soccer perspective or like life,
Let's do both. Let's
life
start
in
with
general?
soccer and then do life. They're both very important as you transition into.
Yeah, I mean, I probably came over to the US thinking, okay, the game is gonna be how I know how I know it. You know, it's
Hmm.
gonna be the same game. So that I would warn him and say, listen, you might be, because the thing is, the structure in Denmark is okay. When you are 18, 19, you're old.
Yeah,
You're an
yeah,
old
yeah,
youth player
absolutely. Yeah,
because you are in the academies teams. You are the oldest you can be. So I felt old coming here, where you become a freshman again, which is
yeah.
considered the youngest. So you have a big switch, you know.
Uh huh.
um, and and that was a shock because I quickly collided with some of the older guys on the team
Hmm.
because I thought, I was old, but in this setting, I was the young guy. I was the guy who had to learn again. Um, so I would tell him, I would motivate him by saying it's about the process. It's about adaptability. It's about not taking it personal
Hmm.
when you might not play every game or you might get subbed out, because that can be hard no matter
Yeah,
who you are. Um, but not taking it personal and understanding how much the team matters, I think is important to understand when you go into college soccer, because the season is so tight. There's so many games. There's so many minutes that
hmm,
has to be played, that you can't do it alone, and you will end up on the bench or you will end up not playing.
it's part of the game.
It's part of the game.
It's part of the game. I mean, at least from my experience, my freshman year, I started playing at the halfway through the season, right?
Mm,
I didn't
mm,
start all my games at all, and obviously, what a point that you made that I really agree with, and that also local students go through the same thing, right? Because when you get recruited to a Division 1 school such as Fordham,
uh,
right, you're usually one of the top players on your team.
yeah,
You're up there, you're 17,
the
18, you're a
captain.
senior in high school, you're captain.
Yeah.
You peaked, right? That's it. You're at your best soccer level ever.
Uh,
You signed, you committed to Fordham University, you're in Division 1 school,
mm,
you think you're it. And then switching, becoming a freshman,
yeah.
and all of that is stripped away is very, it's not something to take lightly, right?
Not at all.
It's a perspective shift, it's a game shift as well, and you start from zero, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of players are never able to get to what they used to be, before college, and a lot of players do. That's also part of the switching and variation that comes with college soccer. But I think it's very important to understand that that's all
Mm,
part of the process, and you might not play for 2 years,
yeah.
and then 1 year the coach will eventually give you an opportunity. I think Carla has done a very good job about giving everyone an
Uh,
opportunity when they serve it, and when that player gets an opportunity and plays well,
mm,
as it happened to me. I was lucky enough
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
I got an opportunity against Seton Hall my freshman year. I did a good job,
Mm,
and I started playing more, right? So I got the opportunity, and once I got that
yeah,
opportunity, it kind of moves forward and forward, right?
yeah.
So I think it's what you mentioned is a very important point to get across, right? It's
Mm,
it's a process,
for sure.
and right now you're a junior, you're gonna be a senior.
Yeah.
Going into your senior year, you're one of the leaders of the team now, right?
Yeah. Some might say.
Some might say, I
Some
would
might
say so.
disagree.
I would say so. So as being one of the leaders, because now you're both older
Mm,
and you're a senior,
yeah.
so you're up there. And this might be it. This you might continue, you might not continue. You're getting to that point of deciding again, right?
Yeah.
So as a leader, what do you think is important, to do and to communicate to the younger classmates and
Mm,
teammates?
mm, mm.
And by the way,
Um,
we have our ex captain in the room right
we
now,
have someone in the room.
ready, a Fordham legend,
We're under pressure.
ready to come in. I've learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's actually a great example.
Hmm.
I don't know if we can name drop yet, but
Yeah, we can.
but
We're talking
Samir,
about Cristiano Ronaldo.
yeah, exactly. Um, but I think a big part of it is how comfortable can you make the freshmen feel, like
Mhm.
within that period of time before season starts, because I think most of them are very nervous
They are.
or intimidated or shaken by the level, or maybe they have to get used to the coach, or they have to get used to the playing style. And what can you do as an older guy to make them feel a little more confident, a little more comfortable in the team
Mhm.
before the first game? And I think we were lucky. Flo and I, at least, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
To have some older guys who also came from abroad, who could give us those small, whatever that was, tips and tricks, and also just be able to hang out with them, see what their routines are, see how do they do things, how do they practice, where do they spend the day on campus.
Mhm.
Because the faster you as a freshman understand the routine, the more you can concentrate about performing.
Yeah.
But if you're spending too much time figuring out, oh, I have my girlfriend here, I miss my family, or I don't know where to find food,
Mhm.
how can you focus on being ready for the game or being ready for practice? So I think
Yeah.
as a leader, because we see each other all the time, we're not just practicing and then we go home to each part of our city. We live in the same place, so we see each other all the time.
Yeah.
Um, so we have a responsibility, I think, to make everyone feel ready and make them feel like they can perform.
So basically, because based on what we talked about, right? I feel like every freshman, especially everyone that comes in as a freshman, it happened to me, it happened to you, it
Uh,
probably happened to the freshman now, it happens to everyone. You get punched in the face, right?
yeah, for sure.
Punch in the face, reality hits.
One way or
You're
another.
you're not at the top anymore. You're at the bottom now.
Uh,
So what you're saying is, how can you make that transition better for them so that they can associate with the team, they can understand their role within their team,
yeah,
even if it means not starting, even if it means not playing for a while, earning and fighting for that position, right?
yeah. And I
And
mean, it has to be a combination, because I don't believe that you can go to a freshman who's been there for 2 weeks and grab his face and tell him you gotta perform now and like
yeah,
motivate him that way. I mean, you have to do it at some point,
it's a process. You
but
gotta
it's
do
a
both.
process.
Some tough love, and some and
And some
some
love,
and some love
some pure
and
love.
some loving. I think we're kind of short on time now. But I think that was a great conversation. I thank you for coming on. We're
There's
probably gonna
always
have
always part two.
there's always part two,
Always
my
part two.
brother, and part three too. Maybe we'll get a little
Yeah,
group going.
for sure.
But I want to help you I want to thank you and you know how much you mean to me and to the team, and I wish you the best, my brother.
It was a pleasure, man.
It was
It
my
was
pleasure.
amazing.
My animal.
Thank you so much.
Great player, right?